In this video, I'm going to talk about evidence for evolution. Evidence for evolution can be broken down into three broad categories: cellular, anatomy, and the fossil record. In the first one, we have cellular evidence. The first idea is that all living things are made of similar cells. So all animals are made from animal cells, and they all share a lot of similar characteristics. And then all plants are made from plant cells, and they all share similar characteristics. And even in between animals and plant cells, they also share a lot of similar characteristics. And so the idea is that because all living things are made of cells, then they share some very, very, very distant ancestor that was also made of cells. If we look at the DNA within those cells, they're made up of the same four parts: A, C, G, and T. Then if we look at the actual genetic sequence of different animals, when comparing chimpanzees to humans, there's a 95% correlation. If you compare a roundworm, which is just your basic worm, to a human, there's still a 25% correlation. So you take the genetic sequence of a human, compare it to the genetic sequence of a roundworm, and there's going to be 25% of it is going to match up together. And so the idea is that this DNA that's similar came from a common ancestor way back when. Right. The next piece of cellular evidence is when we look at similar embryo development. Now remember, the embryo is, after an egg has been fertilized, it then develops into an embryo and grows on into a fetus. And nearly all animals start looking identical. It's essentially just this mass with a little dark spot on it. And then from your embryo is where you start having features being formed, like arm buds. So as the arm bud is being formed, depending on the animal, it might turn into arms, or legs, or wings, or flippers, depending on what it is. But they all start looking the same. They all develop some sort of arm bud, unless we're talking like snakes. Then you end up with these different uses for the appendages. So these similar body parts are called homologous structures. So similar anatomies between species are called homologous structures. So if you take your arm, in your upper arm here, you have your humerus. Then your lower arm, you have two bones, your radius and your ulna. Then you have your metacarpals in your hand. Then you have your carpals which are your fingers. Well, a whale has the same structure. It has a single upper arm bone, or upper flipper bone. It has two lower bones, and then it has these 5 fingers, except the fingers in a whale are covered up with the skin because it's a flipper and not, a hand with movable digits. And so again, the idea is that for them to have similar structures, they had to have come from a similar, or a common, not a similar, but a common ancestor. Alright, next is speciation. And this is the creation of a new species. This can be caused by geographic changes. So going back to Pangea, you have South America and Africa. They're together. You have some species going across both land masses. They then separate, and due to changes in environment and habitat, they're going to evolve along different branches, and you end up with 2 new species, which is speciation. On a smaller scale, with smaller animals, it can also happen with something as simple as a river being formed. So as the climate warms, you have more water, and more water leads to rivers, and so this river has now come through the habitat, and the animals can't swim back and forth, and once they become isolated, they will continue to evolve independently of each other until they are 2 new species. However, they're going to have, again, similar bone structures and homologous structures. Alright, we also have evidence for evolution through looking at transitional fossils, and these show the links between different species. So there's the common picture with like the monkey, and then it's like the next animal, and then it's like a caveman, and then a human. And that's kind of a poor representation of what evolution is really saying. Evolution is really a branch. It's more like a tree. So it's not one thing led directly into another, led directly into another. You had one organism that then had speciation occurred. Now you have two new organisms. And then these two new organisms. So you can go back, but it's branches. It's not linear. So for instance, take the whale. And then specifically we're going to look at the blowhole. So on a whale, your blowhole's on the top of the head. If we look at one of its ancestors, you have the Rhodocetus. And here, the nostrils were on the, are moving backwards. So it's the whale's here, Rhodocetus blowhole's here, or nostrils are here. Then you go back again to the Pakicetus, and the nostrils are in the front. So if we go from the most furthest back to the most recent, nostrils are in the front. Then it's as time goes by, mutations occur. The nostrils are moving from the front to the middle of the head, and then in the whale, the modern whale, the nostrils have then come together to form the blowhole on the top. And we can see that through transitional fossils. And that covers everything for evidence of evolution.